We can start the panel discussion. And to moderate this, I would like to welcome Mr. Ashok T. Ashok is founder and CEO of STAG Software, a pure-play test boutique, and co-founder of Pivotrix, a product engineering development firm. Mr. Ashok T.
Thank you, sir.
Ashok, as I said, will be moderating the discussion. Next, I want to call on stage Mr. Viepul Kocher. I think we have done enough introductions of Viepul since morning, so I will simply say, Viepul sir, please be on the stage. Next, we have Mr. Ashok Pamidi. Ashok is a 30 years industry veteran. In his last stint, he was CEO of Nasscom Foundation and is currently serving as an advisory board member for startups and guest faculty for many prominent Indian universities. So we have two Ashoks on the stage now. Next, I would like to call Dr. Renu Rajani. Dr. Renu Rajani is one of the early entrant in software testing industry and has led large testing practices at IBM and Capgemini. Dr. Renu Rajani. You guys are spendthrift when it comes to claps. Thank God I'm not asking for money. Okay, next we have Mr. Lalatendu Sahoo. Lalatendu is a specialist plus journalist plus evangelist for testing and everything related, and currently is heading the BFSI Test.QE service focus line, and talks about how the function of testing should work. And finally, we have Rahul Verma. And again, we have, I think, spoken already about Rahul Verma. Over to you, Ashok T, sir. One more? Okay. We also have Mallika Fernandes, somehow missing in my notes. I don't know why. I'm sorry, Mallika, but would love to welcome you on stage as well.
So welcome to hopefully a very interesting session, because you've got some lovely gentlemen and ladies up here who are going to share some fairly interesting thoughts, I would think. As you know, that the panel discussion is centered around the theme, and it is titled as Navigating the Changing Landscape. So when we see the major amount of shifts and changes all around us in the way it affects us as an individual, the community, and the organizations we work for, I think we think of probably two things that we end up doing, right? One is to move, adapt, morph, change, to go with the change. The second is about not changing something, but actually sharpening, deepening, going more inside. So it's more like a meta kind of a stuff. So I guess that when we talk about changes, I think this is one way to look at it. And of course, the areas and the spectrum that's up there is a wide spectrum. That means it could be areas of changes in the technology, the intelligence, the smartness, the expectations from customers, people, etc., domains, and so on and so forth. So without going into any more greater stuff, giving this bit of a context, I thought these are the areas that we will probably ask some interesting questions to each one of them, and hopefully they will illuminate us, and in the process we'll know what to do to navigate this changing landscape, right? So obviously one of the things that we know for sure that happens is the fact that the tech itself is expansive, it's multitudinal, it's powering everything, and so on and so forth. So it is indeed smart and stuff. So one of the questions that I had, I will start with probably Mallika, is what does it mean to us as individual testers, as a community, from tools, technology? How do we change? What is it we have to adapt? What does it mean? Mallika, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ashok. I think firstly, I just want to start with all of us knowing that technology is changing rapidly, and the only thing we can do is to adapt to the changing technology. I work personally in cloud first within Accenture, so my focus is quality engineering for the cloud. And let me start with quoting Gartner. So Gartner said in their recent analysis of cloud migrations that about 65% of their respondents were not as happy with their cloud migration, and 55% of them went overboard with respect to cost. And when asked about the one single thing they would like to change in their cloud migrations, 50% of them said they would like to do more pre-migration testing. So this is coming from Gartner, which lays the truth about the value of cloud transformations today. While there is immense value and advantage of bringing in the cloud, we also need to understand that such technologies are complex, are distributed, are heterogeneous. So looking at it from an angle of why do they need a different testing strategy? Why should you look at quality differently when it comes to the cloud versus traditional on-prem testing? So that is the question we have to ask ourselves. And the answer is really multifold, because these are services where you're not writing the code like you used to earlier, right? The code is in the form of services which are provided to be consumed. There is a lot of gray areas where you're not aware of how the integrations are happening in the background, or what is being really what is a code that is really going into those services. So you need to have a different lens, also because such technologies are more scalable, they're more elastic. So the lens that we wear for testing, what we think about for cloud quality engineering has to change. So my focus really is on how do you need to look at testing differently, because these technologies have rapidly changed to be more heterogeneous, distributed, involve technologies that we were not focusing on in the past. Hence, we need to think of quality engineering as well quite differently. So I hope that answers Ashok.
Yeah, that's absolutely interesting point. So I'm going to toss it over to Rahul and ask, hey, is it really changing? Is there things that are still the same, but then you're bolted differently?
Thank you. That's a tough question, because I'll have to make a lot of confessions. I'm lazy. To the extent that I would want to change as little as possible. Because they say change is inevitable, but where? Within you or outside you? Because otherwise, it's not change, it's spelled differently, it's called chase. You keep chasing something outside you. So in my field of work, as an individual tester, because that's still my focus area 20 years later, I would want to change as little as possible, and that can only happen if we merge things, if we stop drawing a line between types of testers, types of testing, thank you, should not be confused with types of testers. So what you learn as a performance engineer, bring it back to being a functional tester, what you learn here. So basically, we need an overall view. Till we keep creating artificial lines, organizations will create those lines for you. So ultimately, onus is on us as individual testers, whether we are going to basically partition ourselves into those types of testers, which I highly recommend against. If you want to really survive AI/ML, we would need this basic, uncommon common sense. Yeah, thank you.
So, since we kind of looked at it from technology aspects, and where she talked about cloud migration and so on, and here he's a gentleman here saying, we need to really understand that there is depth in each one of them. There is stuff that is there on top, but then I guess there is also some underlying thing that's fundamental and not changed, which is interesting. So if you move on from, in some sense, the technology aspect, and if you look at it, let's say to, let's say domain knowledge and process to start with. So I'll go for you, Viepul. So I think it's like, we all say that we need very deep domain knowledge, we need technology knowledge, we need tools knowledge and stuff like that. Are there more skills? Is there any more skills to add and tread new territories in this entire story?
I don't think that was a question we agreed on you'd ask me. So that's foul. Now that's a difficult one, and to think about an answer.
That was the
on
last choice.
fly.
I thought I'd use the exercise the last choice first.
All right. So all skills are going to be redundant. AI is going to replace you. So why worry about anything? And if nobody develops that product, at least for testers, I am going to develop that product where testers will become redundant. So after this talk is over, you can come and kill me outside. Long time back, I had just started my career, and I went to a manager level person for pearls of wisdom. And I said, okay, I am wondering, should I master in C++? Should I master in Java or something else, or C? He said, Viepul, that's a wrong question. You should look at object-oriented design. You should look at object-orientedness, and then it wouldn't matter to you. And I was laughing inside, this guy knows nothing. Of course, C++ is more important. Oh, this is just, abstract thing. Then I went to a cousin of mine, a genius. I had, just crossed college. So in the first year of college, I was taught Fortran in one full year, learned Fortran. So I went to this cousin of mine and said, I want to learn about, I was not a computer science guy, electrical engineering. I said, I want to learn about compiler design. Okay? He said, all right. He gave me a book, Nicholas Worth, Pascal. He said, take this book. In the morning, he gave that book to me. He said, in the evening when I come, finish this book. I said, I did 1 year for Fortran, and you want me to learn the entire book and Pascal, all of it in 1 day? He looked at me, what? It's too much? All right, take 2 days. And again, this time I was crying inside. But as I grew up, 5-6 years later, I realized that all this talk about technology and learning new things actually is, first thing is learning fundamentals, right? After that, everything comes to you automatically. So if I understand object orientation, for example, picking up any object-oriented language is relatively easy. And hence, what he said was not wrong, because to do a programming language, if I understand the concepts, a day is actually more than enough. Various libraries that are there, how to use them effectively and all that, that takes time, right? To get into the philosophy of the language and, look at the nuances, that takes time. But most of the times, you don't really need that. So learning something actually is very easy if you get the fundamentals right. So in that sense, I agree with what Rahul is saying. And from point of view of technologies, for example, we talked about cloud. What is there which is different in cloud? If I understand only that part, how to test it differently becomes very clear and very easy for me. So that way, laser focus on understanding certain aspects and then bringing your knowledge to bear on that should be good enough. That's, in my opinion, the trick. So I won't get into what technology is and so on at this point of time. Thank you.
So you see two different shifts I think we're having. One is about the changing part, the other is about deepening part so that you can manage the change and get on top of it. I think that's constant up there. So now if I go on to Renu, and she talked about the fact that, hey, today there is a whole bunch of architecture stuff with the way we build and the construct in terms of virtualization. And she talked about certain specific things like SRE. She talked about low-code, and we were discussing about low-code, no-code, all that stuff, right? So the way we are building systems, I think, has also changed. So I'm curious to know, what does it mean to us? If people have changed the way it built, what does it mean to us the way we, in some sense, break?
Yeah, what it means is that since systems are not being created ground up by writing every line of code, even though our testing is black box testing, we don't have to test every aspect of it. So you have modules and you're integrating them. Your focus will more be on integration and on APIs and testing APIs rather than trying to test that particular product itself, which is tested already. So coming to, the previous question that how much important the domain is, right? So there are people who are building products. And if you look at any organization like a bank or a telecom company, you're talking about an integration of hundreds of products. Even any SIT release is running, where you have number of products in the architecture which are touched upon as part of the SIT. So are you really worried about what is happening inside that box in a module? Yes, to the extent you change the configuration, you will cover it as part of regression. Otherwise, you are more interested in integration and the process flow going is smooth. Coming to a topic raised about low code, no code, and what it has meant for us, it has made the life easier for testers. Today we cry so much about, okay, we have made IT rocket science. We want experts available like, oh, you are a cloud tester, you know architecture, you are analytics tester, you are an SRE and DevOps and whatnot. The answer is actually all these are much simpler than the software development lifecycle and engineering that we followed, where we wrote every line of code. So what has changed? We have made life more complicated by being lazy, like he said. We don't want to train next generation because we feel what happens to me. People are very, very insecure about themselves and about the career of testing itself. They think that if I imparted domain knowledge, if I handed over the test design, or if I taught somebody how to do test automation, what will happen to my job? Sorry to say, guys, more you let go, more you evolve yourself in new. And new is not difficult. New is actually easier than what you are used to. The people in the panel you see, by the way, here, these are all Gen X. I've known most of them for 20 plus years, right? So I think you should have had a bit more fair panel with some Gen Y and Gen Z who can say how much a rocket science IoT testing is, or how difficult that cloud is, and how difficult it is to find those skills, and I'm not able to get that person with such and such and such skills. Guys, the answer is it doesn't exist. You have to create them. And you know them already, and it's there in your organization. So it's like chirag tale andhera, sab hai aapke paas, and you have created a set of specs which in a combination doesn't exist. So that's the complication created by us. Technology actually has become easier, and testing has become simpler because you are not testing every single line of code that you have written. There are so many organizations specialized in creating those products for you, and even APIs for you. So when we talked integration earlier, the APIs were written internally, which is not the case today. So you get a standard plug and play and bolt on, right? Which has made, in my view, that life simpler. Hope that answers.
I think they clapped. So as we go forward, and I want you to take your paper and pencil and also probably put down a couple of questions. Hopefully we'll have time for a couple of them. So before we close the panel discussion, certainly in the last few minutes for sure, we would certainly invite questions. So once the other esteemed speakers talk about a couple of interesting topics, I also wanted to think through and jot down a couple of questions that you would ask these esteemed panelists here. I've got a question to you, Lalu. And that's, today, on the people side, on the business side, expectations have changed dramatically in what is expected out of an individual, the team, and how we do things, and so on and so forth, right? Of course, there are other expectations from businesses side, from regulation side, and so on. We'll come to that as the next question. But then, what does it mean? How do I know what is expected of me? What are changing expectations that are there? And how do I morph myself to be able to work in organizations and transform myself?
One more loaded question, Viepul. I think I can. So thanks for that, Ashok. See, a couple of things. Definitely, we spoke a lot about skills and technologies and changes and evolution that is happening out there. As an organization, when we go out and we talk to customers, definitely the customers are looking still for the specialization. They are looking, saying that, can you give me a even when Java was just coming up, right? And way back, that time Java was introduced and they will say that, I need somebody who is 5 years experience. They have tested everything out of Java and then, I need all those skills in place. Cloud today probably not changed. Gen AI, everything coming, so probably they will expect, Gen AI experienced people to come in and serve that. Business expectations, and testing alignment. From testing perspective, whenever we think about KPIs, we are still thinking KPIs in terms of, defects, in terms of, what is it that we can prevent, getting into production. We are still thinking about business KPIs in terms of what is it that we can generate for customer experience. Is that what we have to stop and ask ourselves is that enough? Is that actually doing the job where people stop asking that question, saying that, whether testing is relevant enough, whether I need to do testing, whether whatever I'm spending in terms of testing, whether that is actually justified. All those questions should stop. And if that is the case, we have to start rethinking what are the KPIs, what is it that I should really make it available for business to stop asking those kind of questions. For that, we have to also, hence I think Gen Y and all, they can probably ask those questions. Are you, whatever you're contributing in terms of testing, your individual test cases that you're writing or scenarios that you're putting in place or the tool that you're adopting, finally, what does it really mean for the business in terms of business KPIs? If you really go there. If we had some really good sessions today. If there is a banking customer who is trying to essentially launch a new completely brick and mortar less digital platform, what are their KPIs in terms of getting that platform out there? And we as testing community, if we can contribute to those KPIs, those questions will stop getting asked, saying that why testing is relevant, and how do I sponsor testing out there? We are yet to scratch that surface. I don't think we are doing enough in terms of challenging that status quo, saying that whatever I'm doing, it is actually making sense in terms of business KPIs. That is something that we have to really think through and change. So that way.
Thank you, Lalu. So, Rahul, I want to ask you the same question, but I want to shift from organization-centric value to an individual-centric value. So when you look at the same question and then ask, what do I do? How do I kind of look at the entire notion of me generating value?
There's a couplet I wrote in a very different context. So there's one word which would come there, I hope nobody takes it personally. सतह सतह छूकर खुश हो जाते हो, जान समंदर थोड़ा गहरा होता है. So this surface level thinking of testing is the whole reason anybody can do testing. This is not a new thing. Testing is housewife's job. That's what people used to tell me, like such a derogatory thing to say about housewives. So 20 years and still the same thing. Anybody can do testing. So you need, as a tester, you need to think within yourself that it's not others who are telling you that. It's you who is telling you that, okay? That's how we treat testing profession. Until we keep doing that, you would find every decade bell-bottoms would be back. Some or the other thing would tell you in the name of a process, in the name of technology, that testing is there. Testing is not going anywhere. Future of testing, future of tester, these are not same things. Everybody would tell you every 10 years, you are out. You are out. And the base reason for that is that in our heart, somewhere we want to settle for the fact that testing is easy. Anybody can do testing. Okay, so pattern think, I'll take some examples, okay? And ask a simple question from you. How many times should it happen to you before it occurs to you? Cause-effect graphing, leading to decision tables. Root cause analysis, threat trees. These are the same things. These are the same things. Equivalence class partitioning, sampling, workload distribution pattern and performance testing, and choosing what you want to simulate in security. This is same stuff. So till you keep segregating and segregating and segregating, and you don't want to go deep, people would teach you the same thing with different names every time. You would see there's a course on web performance testing and another course on web service performance testing. What's the difference? Instead of HTML, there is JSON. That's the only difference. That's the only difference between SOAP and RESTful also. Repurposed methods. That's it. How many times should it happen to you before it occurs to you? So deeper does not really mean, as Viepul mentioned, very deep. Okay, for example, there are books. There's a book from security, Fuzzing Brute Force Vulnerability Assessment. 15 plus chapters on 15 technologies. 15 technologies. Okay, one book. And then taxonomy we use in our, functional testing word because we want fancy words, right? The only proper taxonomy ever created in testing community is not by functional testers. 4 pages by Boris Beezer doesn't make a taxonomy. One research paper by Kem Kenner for shopping cart doesn't make a taxonomy treatment. You want to find how taxonomies are created, go to security world, check CWE. Okay? So you see, these lines have damaged our craft. It is like brutal damage. So pattern thinking, which Viepul also has been proponent, like Q patterns, so, extensions to noun-verb techniques, the open-ended test design techniques which help you thinking. Critical thinking was mentioned, like lateral thinking. So how do we apply them really to our craft is the need of the hour. And somewhere we'll need to have a collaborative body of knowledge. I can say these things. It's easier said than done. I can't alone do it. You can't alone do that. We'll need to get together from different domains and create a free open source knowledge for everybody. That's the only way I can think of. It's not one man's job or a few people's job. I don't think so we can win this game that way. So that's, one to say.
I can sense the deep frustration, man. Thank you. I'm going to shift gears to a completely interesting topic, interesting way of looking at stuff. Now, here we have another gentleman, Ashok, and he focuses on ESG and social aspects in software and so on. Now, obviously today software originally was built for businesses to help them profit and deliver great services and value. And later, of course, we also profit from individuals. Now, apparently, I guess there is a lot of software which is built to, in some sense, manage, help communities at large and have a social impact. Now, when you talk about softwares that are built for those express purposes, obviously we're not talking about a business domain as it relates to business domain. We're talking about, so does it mean the way I think, the knowledge that I need to have to possibly validate such software, is it different? And the way requirements are written or way we understand that entire stuff and how we do, is it different? So this is more from social aspects to start with. I think you also talked about green part of it, environment part of it is important, where you talked about standards. We'll come to that next later.
Sure. So it's a very interesting thing, Ashok, when we look at largely from the social angle. And thanks to a lot of entrepreneurs today, actually they start as startups. And what we have clearly seen is they generally have a tendency, and especially women, to gravitate themselves to the social entrepreneur side. Now, when we look at software from the social entrepreneur's perspective, it's a human-centric design approach because we got to look at the final beneficiary per se. And it's extremely complicated because let's take a country like ours, right? You have, she mentioned Gen X, you have Gen Y, Gen Z, all those things. Then you have marginalized communities, you have various other ethnicity coming in and so on and so forth. So each and every user's requirement changes. The UX changes. For example, let's say the baby boomers, they don't use so much of, tab. They still go on keyboard. So when you got to design a product for, let's say, the baby boomers or any other people, you got to keep that in mind that the UX has to be at a different level altogether than a typical, younger person. Because the digital native kids, for example, they work in a very different way. They'll say, okay, Google, and get it done. The older generation will require a different set of UX, for example, right? So when you want to design a particular piece of software, your target audience has to be very clear. It can't be one shirt fits all. It never works. And it becomes more complicated when you look at accessibility in assistive devices, especially because you can't say it's just a visually impaired person, because he can be colorblind, he can be totally blind, and he can be partially blind, right? So or he can be one eye he can see. So then you got to ensure those products are designed keeping your target beneficiary in view, right? So that is what is interesting, and what we clearly see is in a country like us, the biggest boom currently I clearly see is happening actually in health, happening in education. For example, in education, there are about 4,450 plus startups and edtech companies in India. And the turnover is likely to hit about 10 billion plus by 2025. Agriculture, biggest boom. The maximum number of software has come out in agri. Because again, the market is likely to touch from something around 446 billion to 580 billion in the next 3 years. So agri will be another thing where we're clearly seeing that social entrepreneurs are looking at it. Here, you're looking at just not increasing the livelihood of the farmer. You're actually working with the culture, because agri and culture go hand in hand, right? You're not changing the culture. So you're working along with the culture and working on increasing livelihood. Apart from all the technology of, saying smart farm, from, seed to farm and other things, which you're doing anyway. And one more area which I clearly see in the social sector making big way. One is education, other one is health, right? And the third one, I would say, to a very large extent, is in the area of, I would say, financial. Because you saw, Jan Dhan itself. You saw, I think, just few days ago, 50 crore. And it was something like 25% only in 2014. It has increased drastically to something like 75%. We are higher than all the other BRIC countries in the world as far as Jan Dhan is concerned or banking is concerned. Now, all these are actually what? Going to the social sector. Please understand, this banking are in the rural areas. It's women empowerment, social upliftment, which is happening. And today, any foreigners who come in, they say, Arey, you have even your coconut seller is actually having UPI. Nowhere else in the world it is there, like what's happening in India. And many other apps are coming in from social entrepreneurs to make livelihood changes to the nook and corner of the country. And that's how this entire aspect is happening. I hope I answered it.
So, a product idea that I had thought of long time back and had forgotten came to fore when you said about the GUI has to be designed in a particular way. And, I was thinking about that some time ago. Why have we boxed ourselves that the GUI has to be designed? Fundamental question. You say design it differently for different people. I'm saying, why do you need to design it? Okay, so if you don't design it, then what happens? Well, the GUI is there. Maybe the program can ask you questions about who you are, if you face any ailments, what is your age, and accordingly create itself, suitable to your personality. So a totally flexible GUI, and this is a product idea I'm giving you. Anybody can work on it, where you don't create a GUI, but you create an engine which can create a GUI based on your preferences, based on, you can possibly tell, I want this here, and this is how I would like it. So maybe you give a default, I don't like it, I want it this way, and the GUI changes itself. Why not? Why should not the software be so flexible?
Interesting. No, when we test software, when we qualify, validate, obviously we do it against some stated or unstated requirements of a product and the needs. But today, I guess, there is also requirements that we have to comply with from a variety of different angles. Could be governance, could be financial, could be environmental, so many. So Renu said that, in the context of business, about 40% of the effort is spent in validating against such requirements. And Ashok talked about it from certain ESG's kind of related standards and so on. So maybe if you can help us understand what it means in the changing world from a standards perspective, business and otherwise. And That's your call. Renu, you start off and maybe.
So standards of different type. So you have process standards, like you have engineering architecture boards, which determine how you write requirements, what all should be covered in requirements. You have functional, non-functional. When you need to test, what all kind of tests need to be there. So those are process, and you need to comply with the process. Then you have, standards relating to, there are, what is common across the healthcare and I would say financial services, et cetera, is that there is a lot of regulation in the industry. Regulation, if you see whether Basel or SOX or OCC as a Office of Controller General and all that. So there are many regulatory requirements. So you need to, in business process itself, you need to see that we are complying with all such compliance requirements. And you cannot all of a sudden say, regulators are asking this information or this dashboard needs to be presented, and you invent it overnight and then not tested, etc. So all this has to be part of the requirement itself. And many more things, like for example, all the applications have become digital and accessible on device. And it has happened very, very rapidly. And you are not going as much to the physical stores, you are shopping online, and in fact in hybrid model. So whatever is available online is also available physically, etc. So there is this, multi-device and interoperability, etc., which has become standards as well and needs to be complied to. Coming to that spend part and how much is this being spent where, there was a time when there was a complete freeze on IT spends, or you're being asked 5-10% reduction in your spend year on year. Even in such times, the ask is to squeeze money out of your regular business as usual applications and do testing more efficiently and industrialize all the routine testing and automate, etc., and divert that spend to digital. On the other hand, come to the standards and compliance and regulatory aspects, etc., it is forming almost 40% of your business requirement in terms of testing. And that remains unchanged. There can only be more complications and more user stories and etc. added rather than less because of increased regulation. And then added to that is the hacking and cybersecurity and phishing and all that which is going on. That is adding to the complexity of the standards to be met and the testing pertaining to it. So 40%, I think, is only going to increase in terms of a testing share or IT share of the compliance part and then anything else. And I just wanted to add to what just Ashok said about so much about ESing, given his Nasscom background, I really enjoyed. And I just wanted to add to that in the software engineering and testing world, all such work is done in the crowd manner, by crowd testing. So you're releasing an app to millions of people. You want it to be tested in different variety of platforms and devices, etc. You throw it open to communities which are using that particular kind of device or are in that particular region, etc., and have them do crowd testing. And same goes with user stories. So you have them contribute to user stories. I just wanted to add that. Thank you, Ashok.
Quickly, can you touch upon the fact where she talked about business standards and you talked about environment standards? Could you just quickly outline us, because we're kind of right on time now?
Yeah, I'll just tell it in about 2 minutes. See, standards actually, if you look at in the ESG, and I think the crowd out here will know, environment, social, and governance, which has become mandated by law, even in India. Now, this is not new, frankly speaking. It started way back in 1800s. Because of the war in US, they were the first one. Quaker was the company which said that, we will not encourage companies which are basically making ammunition for the war and so on. And then coming forward, fast forward, standards have got evolved. And in India, we have a standard called BRSR, which is basically coming in from SEBI. Now, these standards are mandated currently for the listed firm, the top 1,000 listed firm as far as Bombay stock exchange is concerned. But shortly, you'll find that there are something called as limited reporting and reasonable reporting. And as we go forward, there's something called a scope 1, 2, 3. That is basically carbon emissions, which we calculate, and the diversity, equity, inclusion ratios, and so on and so forth. Your suppliers, too, will become important. So coming from 2024, it's just not the top listed firms. You'll soon see that many of the MSMEs who are suppliers to the larger firms will have to start adhering to the regulators, which is the law of the land. Now, many of the IT firms are exports, so they have to follow the European standards. So there is something called as integrated reporting. There is something called GRI. There is, just like you have in the quality functions, lot of 3-letter acronyms and 4-letter, ESG is filled with it. So you have, in US, they follow SASB standards. Then there are others who follow CDP, TCFT. Then there is retail industries or the real estate, they follow GRESB standards. So if you look at it, it's a plethora of frameworks and standards which are there. But having said that, in India, we have come out with one standard, which is BRSR standards, which is 90% GRI, and they will be adding more and more as we go forward. Now, what does it mean to you and me? Very important. These standards are great, but what will happen is, it will help the governance, it will help better employee relationship, it will ensure that, you have good diversity ratios, right? And so on and so forth. So in that way, I would say that overall, there'll be a bright future for us as we go forward in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok. One last question to Mallika and this, and then we will probably see if we have maybe one quick question from them, if possible, but I know we are out of time. And the question is, now, we talked about various expectations. You showed a shining future now. And he talked about the fact that laziness is damn good. Does senior management expect, because as MD of Accenture and as TCOE head, does you as senior management, do you expect the folks like us, testers, to go beyond discovering defects post-code?
Very interesting question. I just want to say we're lazy, so doesn't matter. So the answer definitely is yes, because it's not about us as leadership, but it's about the clients that we're serving, right? So finally, in a services company, we build, we deliver, we design what clients want us to deliver. We cannot miss the focus of the client's needs in all that we do. And if I have to sum it up, what they need is quality products. We speak a lot about testing and coverage and different types of testing. I saw 15 types of testing on the board right here, right? So you have acceptance, you have agile, you have chaos testing, you have all the kinds on the board here. But where do they lead us? Finally, they lead to the detection of defects which ensure quality products. So yes, there is life beyond just test coverage, and that is for us all to ensure that we are delivering quality products and the life cycle quality in the shortest possible time, that's possible. So wrapping it up in a nutshell, that's what I'd say.
Lalu, what do you think? Do you want something, I want more than just defects. I'm putting it very, very crudely, actually, but is there anything more than just detection that you expect? Is there something more higher values that you expect?
I think business, yes, they do, ensure they expect actually quality products out there in the world, no questions about that. I think what we expect as an organization from, the testers' mentality is to create that balance, effective balance in the organization. What I mean is, we as a services organization introduce a lot of changes, lot of requirements, lot of development, lot of things are getting introduced there. Production support, everything is there in place. As a testing, community and skills, we are expected to create that balance and give that non-partisan view to the customers, saying that yes, whatever we are developing, we are not just saying that it is quality product and hey, go ahead and take it, but it is actually proven. And by the way, there is an independent thinking to that, which is not biased, which is not actually corrupted or influenced by the development, side of the house or the support side of the house. So that's something that we definitely are trying to encourage as an organization, saying that keep that independent thinking alive and contribute from testing side. So
Yes, I was going to.
Navika, I need 30 seconds. Oh, I'm sorry. Those of you who watch TV debates might have understood who am I referring to, Anand Ranganathan, dear friend. Well, you know, what do we expect from testers? The testers should be developers, the testers should be users, the testers should be business people, the testers should be sweepers, janitors, you know, people on whose shoulders you can cry, and so on. We want testers to be everybody.
Done deal, man. 30 seconds only.
I think you asked what beyond defects. The word in the business today is resilience. You talk about SRE or whatever, it is to contribute to resilience. And how do you measure resilience? That how many instances of you know, downtime in the prod environment that you have had. And basically, what I expect from testers is that when the release engineering or a release note is coming, they should say what is the system capable of, when it is supposed to break down, and what capability is meant for, and not expect everything you can think of from that application that you are releasing. So release note should actually cover what the system capability is.
Final parting words.
मैं भी 30 सेकंड लूँगा. मैंने क्या बिगाड़ा? Just one message. पढ़ लेते हैं यार. थोड़ा back to basics जाते हैं. There is enough information in the base texts. कुछ कर लेते हैं इसका ना. शोर शराबा बहुत हो गया. कुछ करते हैं. Thank you.
Thank you. I know, I guess we could have gone on for a longer time, and I know it would have been nicer if we did have a couple of more minutes to seek some questions from you and answer it. But I guess we kind of meandered around a lot of interesting topics. Hopefully some are interesting food for thought. Not necessarily all of them is like saying, do everything new. It's a mixture of new, old, deeper, and so on and so forth. You had one question? Do you have a quick question? One quick question. So I'll point to the gentleman who put up the hand first. Sorry. Quick.
To ask is, in many other fields, I don't see this. Testing has been pretty normalized over there, but in software, this word is a culprit for me. The word is basically, it's an upgrade. We are always used to, chalo yaar, upgrade. Then in the next update, we'll be having this feature. But the same thing is not applicable in automobile or in defense as well, right? I can't say when the enemy is standing in front of me, I'll send you an update. Within 5 minutes, you will be able to shoot him. But we are used to this with the software. I did not see any transformation from past 15 years with a couple of organizations which I have worked, and I'm currently working as well. I don't know how we are going to transform that landscape with a update.
Quick answer?
A quick answer is that I would say that, if you look at all the transformation of large firms as well as small firms, right? I think change is inevitable. It may not be perceivable to you directly, but a lot of changes have happened. And believe me, last 30 years I've been in the industry, started off with COBOL and Fortran, and then suddenly we are talking about generative AI. And for a Gen X to learn generative AI is not easy. But then there's no choice. If I don't do, if they say the rate of change of the outside is faster than inside, the end state is inevitable, right? And that is true for you or for me. So I think keeping that in mind, we got to ensure that we are changing. And change is happening everywhere, including the auto, because of paucity of time. The maximum change is actually happening in auto industry than no other industry as far as auto is concerned. You must have heard of driverless cars and so on and so forth. So I think that's my answer. Okay. I hope I answered to you. And I think what is important is change, change, change.
One last question, Mallika. Yeah, please.
10 seconds.
So one question is there, since the paper is there, I don't want to spoil the fun here. So pick.
I just want to quote Darwin on that. So he said that it is not the most intelligent that survives. It is not the strongest person that survives. It's the one who is adaptable to change. So I think that's the answer you're looking for.
One last question, and the question is, what are your 3 inputs to a first-time test manager? And he says that, or she says that, I'm a first-time test manager, failed spectacularly in the last 365 days, which is brilliant. Any quick 1, 2, 3 things. I am a first-time test manager, failed spectacularly in the last 365 days. What are your 3 inputs to a first-time test manager? 1, 2, 3. Any quick 1, 2, 3s from any one of you? Go ahead. And then we conclude. No, 3. That's why I said 3 in 10. In about 8 seconds into 3 is 25.
1, your team probably knows more than you. Rely on them always.
I think I'll say that there's a lot of time spent on tracking testing rather is spent time on proving the value of testing.
Not addressing this question directly, just the previous one actually, just in a lighter vein. I was talking to somebody, and IT as a general setup, we are a very socialistic setup. We keep scratching each other's back. The more updates, the more jobs for us actually to do. So that's something that just to keep in mind.
I have gone through the same experience. So when it happened to me, I stopped being a manager. I told myself I'm not manager material. Maybe you're doing better than me, but that could be also one reason. So it's not a promotional path. It is a skill. Management is skill. It has to be learned, just like technical skills.
Rahul, you raise a very important point. I think we should not look at it as, oh, I have 10-year experience of manager than senior manager and that kind of career path. Everybody should in rotation do test management. And it should not be just one person doing test management.
Thank you so much. Sorry I couldn't take your question. Appreciate your patient listening and hope you found something very interesting from each of the divergent views. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would like to call upon Mr. Jayapradeep and Mr. Vinay Bed to felicitate our panelists.
नहीं है